morning, Commissioners. As you can see, we do not have a chair or a vice chair this morning. As a result, we need to nominate a chair pro tem in order to preside over the meeting this morning. At this time, may I please have a nomination for a chair pro tem to preside over the meeting?
I nominate Rich.
I second.
Okay, that was a nomination and a second by Ms. Welch. All those in favor with a raise of the hands, can you please say aye?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, can you please proceed with the meeting?
Sure. Thank you. Good morning. I'd like to call to order the April 27th public hearing of the City of Tampa's Barrio Latino Commission. Welcome, everyone. I'm Rich Simmons, Pro Tem Chair of the Commission. If you are here to present a project, you will have limited time to make your presentation, so we suggest being thorough but concise. When coming to the microphone, you will need to identify yourself and your relationship to the project. The Commissioners will not ask any questions during your presentation. Your project should be presented in the following order: site plan, elevations, architectural details, wall sections. Staff will then present the staff report. We will then ask for public comment. Following the presentation, the Commissioners will be asking questions in the same order as the presentation. Please state and spell your name clearly. If you are here to speak for or against the project, your time will be limited to 3 minutes, so we take some time now to summarize your comments because 3 minutes goes by very quickly. Following public comment, the applicant will have 5 minutes for rebuttal. The public hearing will then be closed. The only comments which will be allowed after the public hearing is closed will be in response to any questions from the Commissioners. The Commissioners will then discuss the case and make their decision based on the City Ordinance, Chapter 27 of the City Zoning Code, the design guidelines, the Secretary of Interior standards, design review comments, and the testimony given today at this public hearing. The BLC can only act on items that are within our specific jurisdictional responsibility. Owner agents are independently responsible to obtain any appropriate permits and/or approvals. If you haven't already done so, please silence your cell phones. We'll then start with the introduction of our Commissioner, starting on my left.
Good morning, I'm Eric Schiller.
Good morning, Jose Perez.
Good morning, Liz Welch.
Good morning. My name is Jose Salat.
And today from City staff, we have Ron Vila, Beverly Jusak, and Camaria Pettis-Mackel for City Legal. Moving on to the agenda. You have the minutes in front of you in your packet. Has everyone had a chance to review these minutes? Is there a motion, any corrections or comments?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes as presented.
Second. Okay, we have a motion in front of us by Liz Welch, seconded by Jose Jalats. Any discussion? Can we vote on that motion to carry the, actually with the reading of the minutes, it's unanimous consent unless...
Can you have a vote, please?
Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes as stated in our packets?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll turn it over to Mr. Vila for announcements.
Good morning, Commissioners, and welcome. Thank you for your attendance this morning. I do have one item under announcements, is that in your packet is that the BLC administrative approvals are attached this morning. Moving down the agenda to conflicts of interest and ex parte communication. Our legal advisor will address the board at this time.
Good morning again, Commissioners. Camaria Pettis-Mackel from the City Attorney's Office. Will the Commissioners please state for the record whether or not they have any conflicts of interest regarding any of the items that are listed on the agenda? Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I'd like to, I think Commissioner Welch and myself have been one of the cases for BLC 21-31, the Gateway Arch Lighting. We've seen numerous iterations of this project through development, serving on our role as committee and on the board of the YCDC. So we've seen multiple iterations of this project over the last 5 years or so.
Okay, I thank you so much for putting that on the record. Do you have any personal or private interest in regards to the BLC 2131?
No.
Do you believe that based on your knowledge of it, knowledge of the project, that you can be fair and impartial in hear all of the discussion and the presentation from the applicant and the staff regarding this item?
Yes.
Yes? Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And then further, just to continue, has there been any ex parte communications regarding any of the items on the agenda?
No.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Commissioners, moving to continuations. Ron Vila, City of Tampa staff. We have one that is reflected on your agenda this morning, which is BLC 21-34 for the address of 2910 North 10th Street. This request was from the agent to continue to the May 25th. And then just a couple minutes ago, we were downstairs addressing the agenda, and there seems to be some information that just came in at the last minute, and BLC 21-31 for the address of 1211 East 7th Avenue, which is the archway lights that some of the commissioners said that they reviewed the project before, but did not have a conflict with it. That one is also asking for a continuation at this time. Both of those are wishing to continue to the May 25th, 2021 public hearing at 9 a.m. And if we get a motion for that. For that last case that just came in, we do have the agent here, Courtney Orr with the YCDC. She's the manager, if you have any questions for her. Seeing no questions, if you could just have a motion for those two continuations, please.
Does it need to be one or two motions?
It could be one motion, because they're continuing to the same date.
Move to continue DLC 2134 for the property located at 2910 North 10th Street to the May 25th, 2021 public hearing, and move to continue BLC 2131 for 1211 East 7th Avenue to the May 25th, 2021 public hearing at the request of the applicants.
And can you please state on the motion the time?
9 a.m.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of said motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
At this time, we're ready for the swear-in. Everybody that wishes to testify, including staff, please stand up and raise your right hand. I do. Moving to the first case reflected on today's agenda is BLC 21-88. This is for the address of 2106 North 17th Street. Currently, it's a vacant parcel. The zoning attached to it is YC4. It's a fairly large project of about 80,000 square feet. It's new construction for a four-story residential building with site improvements.
Excuse me, can somebody check? My monitor shows me, and I'd prefer to see what we're all looking at. Thank you.
At this time, does everybody have the Sanborn map in front of them?
Yes.
Thank you. So starting with the photo presentation, the Sanborn map from 1929. Property in question is highlighted in the green shaded area. This was 10th Avenue back in 1929. Currently it's Palm Avenue. This project does flank 17th Street and 16th Street. You see the fabric and the density that was apparent. And then just to point out, this is one of the last remaining cigar factories. It's a wooden cigar factory known as the Oliva Cigar Factory. And through my photo presentation, I'm going to show some pictures. The agent has referenced this as part of his presentation, so I wanted to bring that to your attention. This is our vicinity map. Once again, this is Palm Avenue. Property in question is here. As a reference point, you have the interstate to the north, and then you have the commercial core, which is 7th Avenue to the south. This is looking from above. Shows the property here, how it flanks Palm Avenue to the north. You have 17th Street to the east, and then you have the Hacienda's parking area to the west. And to the north, you have the Hacienda complex. Just looking at the vacant site, This is looking from 17th Street to the west. This is looking back at the subject site from Palm Avenue. This is looking to the north. This is the abutting property to the west. This is the parking area for part of the haciendas. And this is the hacienda complex. This is to the north of the subject site. And to the east of the subject site is Catholic Church. This is looking down the street. The subject site is over here to the left of your monitor. This is showing the historic fabric that was in place and is still in place, obviously, is the brick streets and the granite curbing. This is looking down that same street. This is looking back into the heart of Ybor City. This is Palm Avenue, and this is looking to the south. Across Palm Avenue to the south, part of the HCC complex. Looking down Palm Avenue, this is to the east. Turn around the other direction. You see how it bends a little bit here as you look towards the west. And this is a reference to Oliva's cigar factory that I showed in the Sanborn map, and just wanted to show a historic photo of that, and we could look at this as the presentation moves forward, and then just some current shots of that same building. This is looking at the facade that faces Palm Avenue. This is the eastern facade. And this is the south elevation. This is the east. And to conclude with the last photo that I have, this is the west elevation. So that concludes the photo presentation. At this time, the agent will address the board.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for your time this morning. My name is Fadi Garcia. I'm a partner at Open Workshop for Architecture. We are the architecture firm working on this project. I have a PowerPoint presentation for you today. If we can bring it up in the screen if possible. There it is. Okay. For now, we're calling this project the Palm Avenue apartment complex. As Ron stated, it is located on the north side of Palm Avenue between 17th Street and 15th Street, which is currently, as Ron stated, a vacant site. The project is going to consist of an apartment building with 3 wings, all connected. For the purposes of the presentation, we're going to be labeling the wings A, B, and C. Wings A and C are 4-story structures, 45 feet in height. And the wing B, which is at the center, is a 3-story wing, which acts more as a connector between the complex. The property is surrounded mostly by 3- to 5-story buildings, HCC and the Hilton to the south, the Catholic Church to the west, to the east, and the Hacienda housing complex to the west and north of the property. Strategically, after considering multiple master plan options, we ultimately decided to place the building along the south side of the property, mainly to shield the parking from the main corridor, and also it allowed us to utilize 17th as the main access to the building, which is which has the least traffic. And it also uses a current access easement to the west of the property. And I'd like to point out that the ingress and egress easement is recorded as part of the property deed, and it can be uploaded to the record if needed. The landscaping will be used strategically around the property to buffer the small areas that can be visible, small vehicular areas that can be visible from the road, and to soften some of that the building edge along Palm Avenue. In areas where the building steps back, we can use slightly taller species, and where it's closest to the property line will be more of a hedge type condition. We can talk a little bit more in more detail about some of the site details if you guys would like. We can come back to this slide. But generally speaking, this would be the landscaping approach. We'll obviously keep in mind scoring pattern of the sidewalks. We'll work with your staff to figure out some of those details in greater detail as the project progresses. The access for the building is mostly along the north facade, except one celebrated entry along Palm Avenue, leading directly to the district core. The floor plans are stacked and composed of 1 to 2 bedroom apartments with amenity spaces throughout, including a lounge area on the 3rd floor of Wing C. And the third story apartments are actually loft apartments utilizing what we're going to be, you'll see later in the presentation, these dormer areas, and that's where some of the bedrooms and bathrooms are located. First, I'd like to talk about the architectural approach of Wing A and C, which are at the both extremes of the property. As reference, for these 2 wings, we wanted to use a vernacular architectural approach, which relates back to the historic casitas and some of the original cigar factories. As Ron mentioned, the Oliva Cigar Factory played a big role in some of our architectural decisions. And also, the no longer existent today, but the Sanchez and Haya Cigar Factory, that was also a wood structure cigar factory, as you can see here on the presentation. We wanted to, the site curves, which also helped us because we needed to break up the building, and breaking up the building into these 3 wings also helped us control the massing and scale of the site or what would otherwise be a really long building along Palm Avenue. Just for reference, you can see Wing A is actually slightly smaller in length than the Casa Oliva, so I just wanted to make that reference for you guys here at the top right of the screen. Moving on to the elevations, these are at the top of the screen is the south, and at the bottom is the north elevation of the project. There is a slight elevation change north-south on the property. So the south elevation has a stem wall condition at the bottom, which should be detailed with dimensional brick, color to be a beige color as well. And on the north side, the building kind of sits at grade, pretty flush. As you can see, the 2 wings, we wanted to create a consistent rhythm and also highlight the verticality of the building to kind of, because the building is so horizontal, it really helped us, the windows and the window pattern and the louver system and also including the dormers as well. Here's a closer look at what that typical elevation looks like. And the east and west elevations, and you can see here the buildings kind of stacked. And you can see both of those over here. It's west on the left, east is on the right. Here's a typical section of the building. You can see on the far right of the page what that 3rd story loft unit looks like and how it utilizes that dormer space. The dormers really played a really key part on this project. And just for reference, this is a material board, so we are using fiber cement lap siding to be a smooth finish with a white trim cornice details and the beige dimensional brick. Building signage would be a green color. The louver shutters would be kind of that beige, and then we'll have a metal standing seam roof system. Because since we are following a similar architectural approach to the Oliva Cigar Factory, we wanted to make sure that we were pointing out some of the key differences between the 2 buildings. The most significant being the scale and proportion of the dormers. As you can see, we are using the dormers as the predominant architectural feature on our project, and whereas the Oliva uses it more as an accessory architectural feature to the project. Some of the added features include obviously the stem wall condition at the base of the building versus a pier and wood lattice foundation system. The color palette is slightly different. The window sizing and fenestration is also different. I believe that the roof system, it's not shown correctly on this elevation, but the roof system at the Oliva is also different than ours. So there's some key differences, and then, obviously we are accentuating the verticality of our project, especially at that dormer location, whereas the Oliva really emphasizes the horizontality of the building. And then another key difference here is we have a 4-story versus 3-story building. Moving on to the wing B, which is the connector piece. We wanted to contrast that vernacular architecture. We took a different approach to this wing. This wing B, for wing B, we use as reference buildings that you would typically see along 7th and 8th Avenue. This helped us give hierarchy to the project and gave the development a sense of arrival. As you can see here in the elevation, it really does a good job of breaking up that building, and it gives it that really a feeling that you have arrived somewhere. Here's a zoomed in view of that elevation, both the south and north elevation. On the left, you'll see the south and looking back into the district, and then the north, again, treated very similarly with balconies, a metal balcony system that creates a more depth on that facade. On the very far right of the screen, you see the main entry that is located at the north side of the building. Here's a typical section of what that 3-story structure would be. As I said earlier, there is this elevation change from south to north, and so you can see here at the ground level how we're mediating that. The building is all interconnected, so it's pretty simple to keep alignments throughout, so it's just important to kind of throw this slide up there so you guys can see that. And then as an added detail, I wanted to show that we are using the roof of the 3-story building to place some of the mechanical units. And even as far as across the street, 90 feet away from the building, these are still not visible. Here's the material palette that we'll be using. There are some references to wings A and C, but this wing mainly follows it's mostly brick, which is a beige color with white trim cornice details, dark green accents, and you can see some of the light fixtures that we'll be using throughout the structure as well. Just for reference, here's the Ybor City color palette, and this is the spectrum that we fall in within. This is a view looking back, looking north. This is the south facade that faces the district. You can see the relationship between the buildings, the stepping of the building, how it really starts breaking up this facade. Here's a closer look at that main entry that connects back. Really the purpose of this entry is to lead the residents and promote walkability and the pedestrian access from the building into the district. Here's a view of the north facade. You can see how you could see the predominance of the use of the dormers on this building, and using the louver systems to highlight that verticality at each of the dormer locations. Here's the entry at the north, and a closer look at that entry. And really, as a new addition to the Palm Avenue corridor, we believe this project does a great job at connecting the area back to the neighborhood's core and embodies the character of the district with respectful ties to the heritage of Ybor City. This concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that commissioners may have.
Good Good morning, Commissioners. Ron Avila, staff with Historic Preservation. Staff's finding that this application is consistent with the Ybor City Design Guidelines. We had reviewed plans that were submitted to our office on May 9th, 2021. There were some modifications made to those. It's an ongoing developmental process with the agent and staff to get to this point. On page 3 of the staff report, there were some conditions associated with that review that we had on April 9th, and I just want to briefly go through those so we have a complete record as we move forward into the question and answers. As stated this morning, that there were some buildings that were referenced as he moved forward to the development of this project. Those buildings should be used as a reference and not as to copy them line for line. So we asked for them to provide this morning some similarities and some differences of the projects that he referenced. There were some concerns with the ingress and egress of the property. He's coming into the property off of 17th Street. And our concern was to keep it as pedestrian and urban friendly as possible, to keep the dimensions as tight as he can, and also meet the concerns of the emergency vehicles and the trash pickup. So if he could go through some of those dimensional requirements as well. The landscape and hardscape, I think he briefly touched upon that. If he could elaborate on that and look at the locations of the fencing, if any, and the shielding of the mechanicals. There are some on the roof, and then there's some on site as well. There's a large easement off of Palm Avenue, and in the illustrations that he showed this morning, he's going to buffer that with some landscaping. That area could be very unattractive, and if not done properly, so if he could address that issue as well. This building is going to incorporate gutters. To show the gutters where and the rain leaders where they're going to be associated, and the flow of the water to meet City of Tampa stormwater requirements. And then he went through the sections, just to go through the sections again, as far as the balcony on the connector, to call out the materials, the overall color palette you addressed briefly, and then also to discuss the brick that's being used on the connector. It looked like a blonde brick, and if you could elaborate on that, it's going to have a big part in the success of this project. Having gone through the conditions that I addressed on page 3 and 4 of the staff report, that concludes this portion, and I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Is anyone here from the public would like to comment on this case? Mr. Marsh was here, but he stepped out. No, seeing none, we'll move on. We're going to go ahead and ask questions of the applicant of your presentation. We'll start on my left with Mr. Schiller.
I have no questions, thank you.
Do you have a question? The reference buildings that you show for building B, and it says here on the report, enhanced cornice on connector. I mean, right now it's shown as flat, and I think that there's a great opportunity to do something with the parapet walls in the connector building, which is B, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's noted here in the report. So I think right now just being
Excuse me,
flat like
Commissioner,
that-
can you speak a little bit closer to, we can't hear you over here.
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
mask. Sorry. No, what I'm saying is, it says on the report, enhanced cornice on connector. So what I'm trying to say is, I think there's a great opportunity there, even in the reference buildings that you show, there's an opportunity there maybe to change heights, even when the entrance is. You have those two columns that go up and stop right on the edge, maybe that can go up, something like that. I think it would help that facade on Palm. And then on the site plan, if you can put it up,
We can bring up the, there we go.
I think I missed where the enclosure for the,
Oh, here we go.
where's the enclosure for the,
It's to the left of the site.
there it is.
Yeah.
Okay, I see the truck too, okay.
Yeah.
All right, good. And then on the building A, the far right, is there sidewalk there? I mean, it looks like it's right on the property line, right?
Right, so there is a sidewalk, and there's quite a bit of an east, so the building set back slightly from the property line, so we're having kind of a buffer, not required, but we're providing a landscape buffer between the sidewalk and the building.
Okay. I have no further comments for now.
I have no questions.
Just a few clarifications, please. You show shutters, but I don't recall you calling out what the material is and whether they're operable or stationary. And then another question for clarification, Building B, which is the connector, it connects to the other ends too, and you show that as recessed in a darker material. If you could call out what that material is, because I didn't pick that up on the presentation. And then just regarding the site plan, terrific that you mentioned, wanting to reinforce people coming to the building off of Palm. And you actually showed some bicycle riders in your renderings, which I appreciate. Have you provided bicycle racks on the site plan and any kind of additional bike storage capabilities for the residents of the building?
So bike storage in the building is limited, mainly because of we are meeting the 1-to-1 parking requirement right now. We currently do not have bike storage within the building, but we do plan to add bike racks on the site. Again, I think we really want to promote the walkability of the district, so I think these are great points and definitely things that we're going to be adding on this project. To add to your points about some of the other questions, the Building B is predominantly the brick facing, but it does have accents of stucco. So those recessed portions, which are not very visible, those would be stucco material, but it would be painted that highlighted green color as well.
Okay.
The shutters are stationary. That's really purely functional maintenance thing, but as of now, they're going to be wood shutters. We're exploring a more durable material, because those don't last very long, but the aesthetic is definitely to make them seem as they're wood. So that's just for clarification on that. And I think that answers your questions, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead if you're ready.
Are you planning any retail on the first floor?
No.
Okay, since we have the site plan up, a couple questions. Are you zero setback on all your property lines here?
Correct.
Okay, but you said you had a slight buffer just to get the building back off the edge a little bit?
Yeah, well, the site kind of forces us to do that too, just the curve and mediating that curve of Palm Avenue, so it naturally creates buffers. But yeah, the setback requirements is 0 for this project.
Okay.
Obviously with the exception of the VUA buffers.
Okay. And there's no platted alley on this property at any time? Okay. And I see your trash enclosure right there. You didn't really discuss the materiality of that, so if you could comment on.
So we will relate that back to the building, whether it would be the yellow brick or be the stucco painted. Some of these finer details, we want to ask that we can work with staff on some of those finer details. It is a large project. There's a lot of moving pieces. But yeah, so, it's very typical. We don't want the trash enclosure, even though it's hidden in the corner, we don't want it to seem foreign to the architecture, so.
Yeah, and then, I mean, the issue with the gates and how those
Right.
apply to everything else, I think staff's got a good handle on that. They mentioned a generator on property. Is there a generator?
No, there is no generator. As
Okay.
of now, there is no generator. We just, we'll have to we need to work with our MEP team to locate the transformer, but there is no generator. Yeah.
Okay. And all your mechanical units are up on Building B roof?
I would say 90% of them are. Some of them, if we go back to the site, I don't know if the site's still up or
It
not.
is.
Let me see, I cannot see the screen. Well, you'll see that there's some units at the base level along the north facade of the building. There's slightly larger buffer between the sidewalk at the rear of the building and the building, so we are placing some units there. The final unit count is going to depend on the final mechanical layout and mechanical engineering, but we're accounting for some units to be placed at that ground level at the back of the building.
Okay, and you plan to screen those units?
Yeah, those will be, as part of the landscaping strategy, we will be definitely landscaping around those.
And how many units are there?
87 units.
87. Okay. And buildings A and C, are they appear to be the same height, you know?
Yeah, so in section, they're the same building. The only difference between those two structures are the length. So in the sectional quality of those two buildings are the same.
Okay. And on the dormers, do they go all the way to the ridge of the roof? Like
No, they're slightly, we stop short of the ridge of the roof, yeah.
Okay. And you call that a standing seam, but it looked like a 5B crimp. Is that your
It's standing,
plan?
yeah, yeah, correct.
Any, in your stem wall on the south side, which faces Palm Avenue, are you breaking that anyway? I mean, I think you take probably clues from Oliva on how they
Right.
address that.
Yeah, currently we're not. Currently it's just a continuous bottom apron at the building, detailed with the brick. Again, you know, the elevation change just forces us to do that stem wall condition. There's quite a, you know, it's one of those weird areas in Ybor City where there's quite an elevation difference north to south.
Okay, and materiality of your windows.
Yeah, so those, it's going to be a cementatious board trim around the window, and it will most likely end up being a vinyl system to look like, you know, kind of references back some of the old wood systems are more
If you could
durable.
bring up an elevation or a rendering. Be helpful.
We can go back. Maybe show, well, let's show one of the.
You go back to the one previous to that. Yeah.
This will be, there will be single hung operable windows as well.
Like on building B in that middle strip of windows, is that all like one punched out, or you're just gonna, the windows are punched out, or is that whole one entire opening there? I mean, it looks like one opening, but I think you'd probably punch it out and just change the trim.
Are you talking about the corner of where the building?
Between the two, at the corner, between the balconies.
Between the balconies? Is that what you're referring to?
I was referring to the one at the southwest corner.
Okay, let's see. Southwest corner. So the one facing west, the windows facing west?
Either one, west or south. That grouping of three windows, is that like one punched opening, or just the windows are individual punched windows that have a trim and stucco treatment there?
Correct, yeah, yes, they are individual windows. It is a stucco treatment, so naturally it will be set back from the brick. It's a different depth, but those are individual windows with a different trim, correct.
Okay. And I think some of the comments before were like in between building A and building B, you have a connector, and we didn't really get into that of what, I think later on you said it was a stucco. There's no windows in that, it's just basically a corridor.
Correct. It's part of the corridor, it's just set back. We're not really calling any attention to it. It really is to make the building seem a little bit more separate.
Okay, and that's a flat roof on that?
Right.
Okay. I guess I'd like you to comment on the dormer scale. They seem a little bit big, but I'd like to understand your thought process on that.
Yeah, so so going back to at the beginning when I was mentioning that we actually explored different master plan options, we looked at different options. One of them was actually doing a flat roof building throughout the site. You know, we could go up to 45 feet, which allows us to go 4 stories. But as we were doing the massing study, it didn't really feel right. So we started exploring other ideas, and which is why we went back to this vernacular use of the architecture, which allowed us to do this gable roof. And we used the dormers strategically to fit the bedroom upstairs. So the dormer sizing really is, it's the minimum size bedroom that we can, comfortable bedroom that we can get into the space. So that kind of drives the width of the dormer. So we did play with the scale, make sure that we weren't overdoing that as well, so.
Okay, I have no further questions. Thank you.
I have one more question. Just a couple of questions. One, I don't hear or see any reference to a loading dock. Is it not required for a building of this size? And then secondly, you mentioned that you were going to, when asked about the window material, you said it was going to be some kind of vinyl product. Did you mean wood, vinyl-clad wood windows? Because I'm not aware that we allow vinyl products in the historic district, and I could stand to be corrected on that. I thought it had to either be metal or wood vinyl-clad windows.
Sure. We can work with staff to figure out the most appropriate material. As of now, they are planned to be in vinyl. If that's not an accepted material, I'm sure there will be no problem making the switch to something that's more acceptable. As of a loading dock, I don't think that there's any specific requirements for the building. I mean, we do have a normal size 20-foot wide drive at the rear of the building. This is not really considered a large-scale apartment complex. I think once you get to 200 units, maybe. But so it's relatively on the apartment complex size. It's relatively a medium-sized project. So no, as of now that I know of, there's no loading dock requirement. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions for the applicant? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and if you have a few minutes, if you'd like to summarize address any of the questions that we had, or conclude your presentation, and then we're going to close the public hearing after that.
I think I'm good. Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing. The commissioners can now discuss the case amongst ourselves. Mr. Shalatz.
Oh, I think it's a very sophisticated response to the immediate context and the overall historical context. I'm going to point out that one of the things I appreciate most about this is, often with these larger buildings, we do get these interesting architectural responses, but on the exterior, but they often don't reflect on the interior. So I really appreciate, in this particular project, we're getting a building that's compatible with the neighborhood and architecturally interesting along the roof line, and it's actually a real space. That's very refreshing. We don't see that very often in new construction, so I really appreciate that gesture. In terms of overall comments, I mean, I just would like clarification perhaps from staff about what windows are allowed on a project of this scale within the district, and then just very minor things that I think we would need to put on the any conditions, such as scoring patterns on the connectors that we spoke about, and the aprons, mechanical buffering and screening, trash enclosure details, all very minor. I do agree with the other commissioner regarding the parapet on the flat building. I don't think it needs to be anything overly elaborate, but the entrance that you're trying to emphasize on 7th Avenue does seem to be a little bit too subtle, and there might be an opportunity to use the parapet or a variation in the parapet to kind of point to the entrance. And there's a long tradition as well with parapets, especially in the commercial corridor, to put like the building name or the building street number on it. That might be an opportunity to explore as well.
No, he addressed my couple items.
Again, thorough presentation. The only comment is what I said before, and Jose just did too, which is the how do we address that connector and the roof line? There's a great opportunity there, maybe the entrance and all that. So, thorough presentation again. Thanks.
I agree with Commissioner Simmons' comment about the scale of the dormers. I think they're appropriate. I think what I'd like to see is a wider window in the dormer. And I think the scale would look a lot better if instead of 3 lights across, it was 5 lights across. But this wouldn't stop me from voting on the project. I think it might make for a more striking interior too, because when the light streams in, it would be interesting.
Yeah, I think, overall, I think this is a really nice project. You know, I think it addresses a non-traditional site, you know, with that angle, how Palm Avenue goes there, and I think the building really addresses that curve in Palm Avenue very nicely. I like that it breaks down into 3 different modules, that you're not talking about one just blanket building going across the whole site, and I think they've done a great job of that. They've taken excellent historical cues from the district, not only along Palm Avenue, but along 7th, and really kind of brought this into a modern interpretation. I agree with the other commissioners. The 2 things that kind of bother me is the scale of the dormers, and maybe it is, maybe the windows, you know, with a different configuration there, or change that up to be the culmination of the top of that building, a little bit different. I think Oliva kind of addressed that, but the scale of theirs is so minimal compared to this. So this is but you know, I mean, it could be something that's, you know, a nice design feature that kind of brings that out and enhances, magnifies that detail, because the dormers are a beautiful detail, and I think that'll be a nice, you know, presence in the district. I also agree on building B that maybe that parapet wall needs to be a little bit higher. You know, that would help out with hiding some of the mechanical units, but also just brings that together a little bit more. But, you know, from a design standpoint, I'd say, well, that interior building being lower, it really lets buildings A and B be the forefront and the more important features there. So I can appreciate the moves that they've done here. I agree with the other commissioners on some of I think the project as a whole is excellent here, and it's well detailed and proportioned. Some of the detailing issues, I think they're probably, you know, still figuring a lot of things out. I have confidence that they'd be able to work on those details with city staff and work those things throughout the process. I think we kind of have a decision if, you know, there's enough information here to move forward, or if we want to explore building B with the parapet and the dormers on A and C. I think that's open for discussion, but I think it's a really nice project that addresses a tough site, and it does so with a nice historic context. We feel strongly about the dormers and the
I like the exaggeration of the dormers. I think it really helps it stand out from the more historic cigar factory down the street. Plus the fact that it's an actual space, as I mentioned earlier. If it was purely decorative, I would sort of agree, but it is an occupiable space, and they're trying to, you know, they're really trying to maximize the livable space within the roof. I feel like it's ready for a final with some of the conditions we talked about. I'm comfortable with, I do agree, and apparently other commissioners agree, that there might be something to do with the parapets in section B, although I think it could be really subtle. I appreciate what's being done, you know, the stark contrast, but especially at the entrance block, you know, even just a minor gesture, I think, would improve. But I would could put forth a motion with just some conditions for staff approval based on the discussions we've had, if other commissioners feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, I think that's a real nice project, and, you know, I think, you know, they're designers at heart, so I think they're going to look at these things anyways, and if there's anything significant you know, that is beyond staff's purview, that, you know, they can come back and take a look at this. But I think there's some more opportunity maybe with the windows on the dormers, or that parapet for building B, but I think we can entertain a motion at this point.
I would move to grant a final approval with conditions for the drawings and documents presented at this public hearing in BLC 21-88 for the property located at 2106 North 17th Street, with the following conditions. That the applicant work with staff to finalize the material and profiles and placement within the wall of all the windows on the project. That the applicant work with staff to finalize details regarding the trash enclosure on the property, any mechanical bufferings or screens required, and finalize scoring patterns for the areas we're calling connectors between the major building blocks, and scoring and patterns along the aprons of the building. And that the applicant investigate the location of bicycle racks on the site plan. Because based upon the findings of fact, the proposed project is consistent with the Ybor City Design Guidelines of the City of Tampa for the following reasons: that the placement on the site, the scale, and the building typologies all reference patterns within the historic district.
Okay. And you want to just cite Chapter 27 of the City's Zoning Code, Secretary of Interior Standards, and Design Guidelines, and
Okay.
then in the red.
Do I just have to say that? Because the drawings presented and the design presented do follow the design guidelines referenced and the Secretary of Interior standards that we adhere to here on the board. Is that enough? Okay. Sorry about that. It's been a while.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of said motion, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Can you ask, Mr. Chair, I apologize, Kamaria Pettis-Mappel from the City Attorney's Office. Can you please ask the
Sure.
agent if he recognizes and understands the conditions that were placed on the motion?
Okay. There's been numerous conditions placed on this motion moving forward. Are you okay with those conditions?
Yes, and I'd just like to thank the commissioners and the city staff for all your guidance, so thank you.
Thank you.
And can you confirm the vote, please?
Unanimous.
Okay, thank you.
So, motion carries with 5 to nothing. Okay, so having no more, well, we have one more item on the agenda. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
There's a, item number 9 on our agenda, election of officers. Seeing that we don't have the chair and the vice chair at this meeting, I'd like to propose that we table this, continue it to the May 27th meeting
And
at 9
Commissioner
a.m.
Schiller, did you just make a motion to move?
Yeah, I was finishing the thought, and then Eric said, so moved. So we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of said motion, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We'll move that to the May 27th meeting. Seeing no other business in front of us, we are adjourned. Thank you.